get a quick smoke break in, and I'll be ready. Keep driving, baby, set the track. With the rain pouring down your back, feel the weight dragging you down. Get up, breathe the air right now. Roll, baby, through the waves. When the crews sing better days, crashing through the waves again. Start riding on the back of the wind. Leaves and people change when they fall. Anxious world lives fast and small. Easy tempo.
What's up, Jags fans? We don't have a long intro tonight because we have a lot to get to on this Super Tuesday of a Jags franchise moves. So much to talk about, and I'm really excited because tonight I have a special guest. But before we get to that, you know, I always got to plug the social media: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. That's all in the channel description. You can find all that. You know what to do. Without further ado, I want to bring in my special guest, and we have Bubba from College Football Cauldron joining me tonight. Bubba, how's it going tonight?
Pretty good. I'm glad that you invited me on tonight because I think I got the primo free agency spot. Probably one of the busiest days of the entire offseason. I'm glad I was able to get on with you tonight and talk about it.
So I got to say this about Bubba, and I was trying to think today. I was like, what's the best way to describe Bubba to people? You've seen him on this show before. I've known him for a long time. The best way to describe him for people who have never seen him on my show before is, you know, every once in a while when you like come across like a YouTuber or a content creator or someone who, like, when you actually like take some time to listen to what they have to say, you think like, oh wow, this person knows a lot about football, and this person knows a lot about the NFL, college football. He's a big college football guy, so that's why I like to bring Bubba on, because he's one of these people that when you listen to him, he knows more than all of us about football. Okay, so it's always an honor to have him on. So I'm super excited. You guys are gonna love this show. We're gonna be talking about Jags, the moves they made today, free agency, the draft, which is right in Bubba's wheelhouse with college football. But before we get to all of that, a special congratulations to Bubba, because Bubba just got married last week. So Bubba, how does it feel to be now married? Like, what's life like now? Like, tell us, like, what are your new feelings now?
It's really been an awesome 4 days so far. I didn't have the foresight to schedule it around the NFL Combine. You know, I was just thinking, I was like, you know, like in the football season, it's a great time. And then probably like a month and a half, 2 months ago, I realized it was right around the Combine. I was like, oh, that's a bit of a blunder on my part. But no, it's been an awesome 4 days. We've had a great time moving in, getting everything set up. It's been busy, but good. So far, so good.
Well, you know, when you get married, it has nothing to do with you. It's all about her. So to think you even had any say in that, it shows a lot of gall out of you, Bubba, I have to say. So glad everything's going good. I was able to be at Bubba's wedding, and I mean, amazing. So happy for him. So excited for them. It's going to be great. So congratulations. Now let's move on to the important stuff here. Okay. So I do want to get to some of these comments. Keep the comments coming. There's a lot of people in the chat already, I would imagine, on this Super Tuesday with a lot of moves. But I want to get to the biggest news, I think, in my opinion, was Josh Allen being tagged. So, I mean, we kind of all saw that coming. I'll just ask you, do you see a deal getting done long-term before the season starts with Josh Allen?
I believe it happens. I mean, if you think back just last year, the Jags tagged Evan Ingram before he ended up agreeing to a long-term deal. It's basically the tag at this point of the offseason. All it is it gives the teams and the player the ability to extend contract talks without the player hitting free agency. That's why I see it. And then worst case scenario, it's a backup to, hey, at worst case scenario, Josh Allen's on the Jaguars for the 2024 season. But more likely now, I think it's just a way for the team and the player and their agent, whoever's in the players' camp just to be able to give them an opportunity to extend contract negotiations a little bit.
Does it concern you that they weren't able to get a deal done? I mean, they knew this was coming for a long time. He had a great season. It kind of seems like he would be a shoe-in to signing a long-term extension with Jacksonville, being drafted here and being comfortable here. I know that there's a lot of like nuances in contracts as far as like incentives and things like that, but does the fact that they weren't able to get a deal done before the franchise tag concern you at all?
Not necessarily. I mean, if we're being completely realistic, the deal should have been done after last year. I mean, you had the opportunity. Josh was coming off, I think, like a 9.5, 10 sack season, as opposed to a 17.5 sack season. The deal probably should have been done last year if you had a little bit of foresight, but front office seems to struggle with that at times. But it doesn't concern me too much. Like I said, same thing happened with Evan last year. I mean, they seemed like there's reports that they were miles apart, and they ended up coming to a deal. And I mean, according to all things that we've heard, negotiations started about 2 weeks ago. Josh Allen is into the season, and a few weeks into the season, actually around Super Bowl week, said he hadn't heard from the Jaguars. And that was, 3 weeks ago? So they haven't started contract negotiations. So like you said, there's a lot of nuances, kind of stuff. And when you just start it 2 weeks before the tag deadline comes, this is more likely than not the result that you're going to get. I mean, so whether that's the player's agent holding out for a ridiculous high amount of money, which, let's be fair, Josh earned it. I mean, Josh went out there, contract year, the Jaguars rolled the dice and lost. I mean, they rolled the dice saying like, hey, maybe Josh doesn't go out and just have a career year. And he did. He went and had 17.5 sacks, had more sacks than the defensive player of the year, Myles Garrett, went out and just had an elite edge rusher season. And then he expects to be paid like an elite edge rusher, which I don't think it surprises any of us by any means, but
yeah, with $24 million franchise tag, I mean, it's probably around. I mean, he'll make some serious cash. So
it'll be around. Yeah, I mean, if you sign him before last year, it's probably $17-18 million. It's going to be closer. You're going to be trending towards the mid-20s now. So obviously, like you said, there's a lot of nuance. I mean, guaranteed money is going to play a big part in it. How many years Josh wants is going to play a big part in it, and then whatever the team's comfortable with as well. But it's probably going to end up being somewhere around 23 to 25 or $26 million a year, and it's just those few millions here and there that the teams and their agents are trying to negotiate on.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. First one in the chat was Guy. He says, yo. Channel member Corey T says, oh, baby. It's a couple of people already anticipating a pop-in show tonight with all the things to talk about. Nolly Full Cab channel member spams the Blake Bortles emoji. Rico's a channel member. He says, what up? My favorite comment, I think, is from Raw Jeebs, who says, my honeymoon would be hanging out with Jaguars United too. So that's very nice. I get that for sure. So I think the Josh Allen talk is, I mean, I think we kind of all saw that coming with Josh Allen. I mean, we knew that contract was going to be complicated. When you get we're seeing franchise tags all over the league with all these teams, all these big people, free agents. These big numbers and players, they're getting franchise tagged like all over the league. So we kind of saw that coming. The biggest news to me, though, was Darius Williams. I went on a rant last show because Trent Baalke in his press conference at the Combine kept talking about, he gave us no answers. Eddie Wogemuth donated $1.99. Now, why is Eddie donating money? Like, he's a poor student. He needs to be keeping all his money. He needs to be saving it and not spending it on frivolous things like this. But thank you, Eddie. I know you're related to Bubba, so I'll take that. That's fine with me.
Not only that, but the donation's doubled since last time. I think the last time I was on, Eddie gave $1. Now
you're right. You're right. He must be getting some revenue streams somewhere. So we may have to look into that a little bit. But Darius Williams was the biggest news to me. Trent Baalke said that they're looking at a corner. I thought that was a smokescreen because I looked at corner as one of the strongest parts of the team if you were bringing back Tyson Campbell and Darius Williams. But now we know that their plan was to get rid of Darius Williams and to save $10.5 million on the salary cap. If you're the GM of the Jaguars, would you have cut Darius Williams to make $10.5 million on the cap? Would you have made that move?
No, because it was. I talked to you about this Friday. I was like, why is everyone mocking to the corner? Jason's like, it's a smokescreen. I agreed with you. I mean, Darius Williams was their best corner last year. Now, obviously, Tyson had his injury struggles. Buster Brown stepped up in kind of a third outside corner role, whatever you want to call that position, because you're going to count your nickel as your third corner. But he was your third outside corner and played pretty solid for the kind of guy that you're going to get at that position. But Darius Williams was your most consistent corner last year. I think he's probably worth the $11 million price tag that his cap hit was supposed to be this year if we're keeping all things relative. I don't get the move at all. That's just a bit of I understand he was one of the most cuttable guys coming into the offseason because of his dead money. Like you said, he was set to make $11 million. His dead money is only $500,000. So $500,000 is going to stay on the books, which is a lot less than guys like Rashawn and Foley and other guys on the team. So yes, that does make him a cuttable target, but all you've done is create another need. Like you said, you thought corner was one of the strongest positions on the team, which isn't saying a lot with this roster, but I did kind of agree with you. Like, was corner depth probably an issue? Yes, but so was interior defensive line. Not only is offensive line depth, I have a whole tangent I want to go on offensive line. I have like 40 notes written down.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
I know. I'm getting ahead of myself here. But I mean, like offensive line depth isn't an issue. The 3 out of 5 starting positions of offensive line are a massive issue. Not only that, but offensive line directly correlates to your quarterback and that how he plays and how healthy he is. Corner wasn't a need, and all we did is just go out there and make it a need. You're going to lose your nickel probably in the offseason in Trey because he's a free agent, and then you just go cut your best corner from 2023. Yes, you hope Tyson reestablishes himself with that end of season 2022 play that he was showing, and just kind of chalk up this year to being a little off at times and suffering a lingering hamstring injury. But all you did is create a need for yourself today. If I had to guess, the plan was for them to be able to re-sign Josh before and to really create this cap space was to re-sign Josh before the tag deadline and to be able to tag Calvin. But that didn't happen. So you freed up all this cap space, and now you don't even know what to do with this cap space that you just recently created for yourself, which I think we're around $21 million right now, somewhere in that range after you apply the franchise tag with Josh with the $24 million. But then you also have to think about it that you need around $9 million for draft picks, which leaves you with about 11 to 12 million dollars to operate with in free agency, which isn't going to be enough to tag or re-sign Calvin long term, unless you backload his contract, which just in general I'm not a fan of. But some people have differing opinions on that.
I was hoping to see some cuts at other places, mainly like Brandon Sheriff. I think would have been
$9 million we could have saved there. I mean, Jason, he has, I think, the highest cap hit of any guard in the league. I don't quote me on this 100%. He's going to be set to make $24 million this year. I understand Darius was a more cuttable guy because of his contract. And you obviously those dead, you don't want $14 million of dead money, which would have happened if you cut Sheriff. But I mean, just look at 2023 production. Darius was your best corner. You didn't really have a need at corner, whereas you could cut Brandon, and with that $9 million, you could probably get someone who's pretty equivalent in skill and playing level, because I don't think Brandon had an excellent season by any means this last year. He's getting up in age. I think he's 33 now. I 100% agree with you. And I'm not pro cut Cam Robinson, but you could have saved $17 million cutting Cam Robinson and then gone out and got another tackle, or reinvest that money into interior offensive line and then use draft capital at left tackle, or even move Anton over and then draft a right tackle if you don't feel like investing your first round. I mean, I just think there's a lot of other ways to free up that cap space. I think there's opportunities to free up either the same amount or more cap space in that same exactly what you're talking about. I think you hit the nail with the hammer there on that one.
I was trying to like critically think, okay, what's the justification behind this move? And if the justification has to be that we're going to basically just invest in the offense, and that we're going to see what we can do with defense. I know they've been talking about corner, and then even if they draft a corner in the first round, the fact that they're choosing up to this point to keep Cam Robinson, to keep Brandon Sheriff, and to get rid of Darius Williams, who, like you said, was the best corner on the team last year, just leads me to believe that like they're just going to try to save money to try to get Josh Allen back. They're going to try to get Calvin Ridley back. They're going to try to just get this team offensive loaded, and then maybe try to go in with some young guys on defense. Because if you're trying to create cap space, like you said, you get rid of Cam Robinson, you get rid of Sheriff, and then that saves you a bunch more money than cutting Darius Williams.
I'm not great at math, but I think that saves you $26 million cutting those two.
And that allows you to draft a guy to play the offensive line. You have Walker Little and Anton Harrison, who, are friend, or one's a fringe starter, one's a solid starter. So I mean, you had other options. It's just kind of confusing. Because now you're having to use that first round pick on a corner. And maybe the other part of it that I thought is like maybe they're not sold on Tyson Campbell, and maybe they're like, because of, I know there was injuries last year, but maybe they're concerned about the future at corner beyond this year, because after this year, you do have to sign Tyson Campbell too. So maybe they're thinking they won't be able to sign Tyson Campbell either. Go out and get a young corner who can be your number one corner for the future and keep your offense intact, and hope Trevor Lawrence can kind of push this team to the playoffs on his arm alone. And that has to be the justification there. because it makes no sense to cut your best defensive player. Like I think he was, I mean, obviously outside of Josh Allen, but I think he's your best defensive player outside of Josh Allen. And with the release of Rayshon Jenkins, now you're 2 secondary players down. So they got a lot of work to do in the draft. Like you said, they don't have a lot of cap space to kind of clean up the team. And we'll kind of go through some players that have been mocked to us here in a bit, and some players that you think might be a good fit here in Jacksonville. But yeah, that move was, I think, surprising to a lot of people. You had a lot of cuttable people that weren't performing, and to cut one of your guys that was performing is just a little surprising. So I want to move on to the offensive line here. Before I do that, Mrs. Duval, who's a channel member, wanted to say, congrats, Bubba. So you're getting some congrats in the chat. So that's very nice of her. So let's move on to the offensive line here. Well, actually, you know what? Let's not. Let's stay relevant here. Okay. We also had cuts to Foley, Fatukasi, and Rayshon Jenkins. Just give me your thoughts on those 2 cuts. What did you think when you saw those?
I think both of those make sense. I think if you have asked Jags fans, you give them a list of all the players that are under contract for the 24 season, who are the most likely to get cut. I think 2 of those both of those guys would have been high up on that list. Obviously, Rayshon makes sense because the Jags feel like they can roll with Antonio Johnson and still keep Andrew Winger, Dewey for safety depth. So, and he's pretty versatile there. I mean, he's probably not a start. Dewey's probably not a starter, but he can play some free. He can play some strong. He seems to know at least Mike Caldwell's defense pretty well. So obviously, I think you roll Antonio Johnson into that spot. They liked what they saw of him. I know he got a late start to the season, but after he was healed up, seemed to be pretty productive out there. He was kind of roaming around, I think, a little bit more than he will in the defense coming up now, since he can be taking on the starting safety spots. But that one makes sense. And then Foley, I think, was a bit of an issue. I just don't think he was living up to his contract. I mean, he's making $11-12 million a year. And I mean, that's going to be for interior defensive lineman. That's, not that top tier like Chris Jones or Aaron Donald. That's almost like a second tier defensive lineman. Interior defensive lineman, you think about it like that. Those guys are $11-12 million a year. I mean, Justin Madubuike got franchise tagged today, and he was just absolutely dominant for the Ravens the entire year. And then you give a guy like Foley Fatukasi like $12 million. You expect a little bit more than the production you got of him the past few years.
You mentioned Antonio Johnson in passing. What are your thoughts on Antonio Johnson? I mean, we didn't see a large sample size out of him. Do you think it's a smart move to roll into the season with him as your starter?
I don't know. I mean, you hope that the coaching staff in the front office saw enough last year to, kind of, because you remember Cisco hardly played his first year as well. People had questions about him. Then we realized it's because Urban didn't like him for some reason. I mean, he was very clearly a safety that should have been on the field more. And for whatever, like I said, for whatever reason, Urban was just anti-Andre Cisco, doing Urban things, as we all know. But you hope that the front office liked their evaluation of Antonio Johnson enough in the limited playing time, like you said. Obviously, Doug it's a brand new defensive staff, but Doug was able to watch Antonio last year. You kind of hope at this point. I mean, there's not a lot you could do about it as a fan, obviously, but you hope that Antonio Johnson was promising enough on the field last year in limited action to think that they could save money with Rayshon without seeing a massive drop-off in play. Because Rayshon's been solid for the past 3 years for this team. I mean, is he star safety? No, but he's been a solid player. He's made big plays at certain times. I mean, everyone remembers the Dallas game from 2022 when he picked 6. But we'll see how Antonio slides into that role. It'll be interesting because he was kind of mocked as like a nickel safety hybrid coming out of college. So, and maybe an entire offseason of him. Because I remember a lot when he got drafted, he dropped far in the draft. I mean, we ended up getting, I think, in the 5th round last year. And coming before he didn't test well at the combine. Coming into the combine, some people had him as an early 2nd rounder, even slipping late into the 1st. So he was a talented guy in college, didn't test well, caused him to drop. I think it was because when you don't test well and you're supposed to be a corner, that basically people are like, oh, he's moving to safety. So we'll see how well the coaching staff and front office did on the evaluation of Antonio, and hopefully an entire offseason with a new defensive staff of just him playing safety only, not having to mess coming down with nickel at all. Hopefully that gets him prepared for the 24 season as a starter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on analysis. We were all a little worried coming out of Texas A&M how he'd play as just an NFL safety, but I mean, he looked good in the short sample size. Gladiator97 super chatted $5 and said, "We need to talk about that Orlando Magic JJ Redick jersey in the background." Well, I got to tell you, JJ Redick is my all-time favorite basketball player of all time. I actually have an autographed jersey that's not on my wall. That's Player of the Year 2006 signed Duke jersey by JJ Redick. And although I'm not a huge, I like Duke, but JJ Redick was just, I modeled my game as a basketball player around JJ Redick as someone who was not very tall and loved to play basketball. So I moved off the ball, good, running off screens, played good defense, spot up shooter. That was my game. So love JJ Redick. I love the Magic. So, I had to put the jersey up on the wall. So Gladiator 97, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. We got about 5 or so minutes here before we got to take our first break because Bubba and me are on Zoom, and it's the free Zoom, and Zoom only lets you go for about 40 minutes before you have to restart it. So in about 5 minutes, we're going to take a 1-minute break, reset the Zoom, and then come back and talk specifically about the draft. But before we get there, the offensive line, huge issue. The biggest liability on the team last year was evidently the offensive line. And like you said at the beginning of the show, there's a lot that needs to be addressed. So it seems like that the team's rolling into the season with the same 5 that they rolled into. Ezra Cleveland was an addition halfway through the year, but it seems like they're rolling in with the same people that they rolled into last year, which we all know is a terrible idea. So is there anything that we're not seeing? Is there anything that coaches are looking at that we're not seeing? Nolly Fullcab is now a channel member for 29 months. That's over 2 years of channel member. Thank you, Nolly Fullcab. I really appreciate that. That's over 2 years of dedication. Thank you, Nolly. So thank you. Anything, Bubba, that we're not seeing that they're seeing with this offensive line strategy going forward?
The only thing I could think of the coaching staff is hoping for room to improvement with his current 5 is that the season's got derailed by injuries last year. And though, there was injuries, but Sheriff was kind of banged up. He banged up his ankle. Harrison struggled, I guess. I don't think he missed any time, but struggled with some shoulder stuff. Fortner was healthy and just horrible, but it was bad. Jason, I was hoping you kind of wait till after break to bring up offensive line so I could go on tangent, but I have a bunch of stuff right here.
We can come back to it. We can come back to it.
No, we'll roll into the break. We'll do a halfway offensive line break. So the Jags 2023 offensive line. I don't think people realize how bad this unit was. I think people the offensive line struggled. It was a bottom 5, if not bottom 3 unit in all of pro football last year. So the Jaguars converted third downs by the way of running back runs only 39% of the time. That was 4th worst in the league. And just Kansas City was number 1. They converted third down runs with running back 77% of the time. The Jags were at 39% of the time, which means you struggle with short yardage. 25% of all the Jaguars run plays failed to gain any yards last year. I think that was second to last in the league. No, actually, I think that was dead last in the league. Trevor Lawrence was the least blitz quarterback in the league last year at 20%, only 20% of his snaps. 1 out of every 5 snaps, someone blitzed the Jags. However, he had the 3rd lowest time to throw at 2.51 seconds in the entire league. PFF rated Luke Fortner. I'm not a big PFF guy either, but I think in context like this, it's somewhat applicable. PFF gave a Fortner overall grade of 44.3, which is the worst out of any Jaguars offensive lineman. That's your starting center. Pro Football Network ranked the Jaguars offensive line as the 28th in the league. The only teams that were worse were both New York teams, the Panthers and Titans. All 4 teams below us had starting quarterback injuries, including the Giants and the Titans, who had 2 starting quarterbacks injured. So that's definitely the company you don't want to be around. The Jaguars were 31st out of 32 in pass block win rate, which measures that linemen can sustain blocks for 2.5 seconds or longer. They only did that 46% of all snaps. So, it was just historically bad Jaguars offensive line. There's no way you can succeed in that offense. Any criticism of Trevor Lawrence, I think, from last year is completely null and void because he's getting hit. He has a turnstile at center. He had Ezra Cleveland playing left tackle. I understand that was because of injuries, but even Cleveland came back a few weeks after the Cleveland game, no pun intended. But after the Cleveland game, he started at left tackle, got hurt, came back. Tampa, he allowed 8 pressures against Tampa. He got graded out as a 13 over the course of the game in all pass blocking situations. It was an abysmal unit. We're so far past the season now. I don't even remember how mad I am at Press Taylor, but looking back on it, it's impossible to do anything. People were complaining with the lack of passing the ball vertically. They're upset with the inability to run of this team. They're upset with all the screen and quick passes. But that's what you have to do as a play caller when you have under 2 seconds to throw the ball in certain plays. If you just can't run the football and you're constantly stuck in 3rd and longs and 2nd and longs, because like I said, 25% of the Jags run plays gained 0 yards or lost yards. That's something else you also have to take into account there. there's not much you can do as a play caller, and there's not much you can do from an offensive perspective as far as game planning goes because you can't stretch the defense vertically.
I mean, Corey T, channel member, sums up exactly how I feel when I was listening to that. And he said, Bubba is kicking in my PTSD with all these O-line stats.
That's what it was like. Thank you, Corey, because I was thinking the same thing. I was going through, I was like getting mad as I was reading all of this. Like I was watching a Jags game again. I mean, people, not only that, I mean, this is the offensive line. Like receivers were running the wrong routes. And then people were going to go out there and call Trevor a bust. I mean, that just turned my gears. It makes me so upset. You cannot succeed. Like, look at the teams below us on offensive line rating. The Panthers won 1 or 2 games last year. Both New York teams who were both horrible on the offensive side of the football, and Tennessee. Like, that's who the company you're with. And then Trevor and Doug and whoever else on that offense, Evan, Christian, willed this team to being an average offense, which is honestly, with this offensive line, is a bit of an accomplishment.
That's true. I challenge people all the time that were blaming Press Taylor. I said, go play a game of Madden or simulate in your mind trying to call plays when you cannot run the ball at all.
Yes, cannot.
It's impossible. So
not only that, but you have 2.5 seconds to throw. And what that does is, I mean, Cleveland does it against everyone, but I think the Cleveland game was a great example because teams are going to, I mean, if you can't get open in 2 seconds, the play's dead. Your quarterback's going to get killed. If you can't win quick at the line of scrimmage, which our receivers aren't the most physical, you don't have that big receiver that can win contested balls one-on-one. That's a hole in the roster as well. Thanks for that, Trent Baalke. But when you don't have that receiver on your roster that can win quick, which Christian Kirk was our guy, but then Christian Kirk gets hurt, and then you don't have that guy that can win quick off the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's impossible to call plays. It's impossible to do anything. As a quarterback, like Trevor having the year he did was honestly, so looking back at all of it, it was obviously people were frustrated at times. But some of it was impressive because this offensive line was just horrific last season.
Yeah, I agree completely. What I want to do, we're going to take a quick break to reset the Zoom, so give us 1 minute. On the other side, I want to get your thoughts on, do you think that Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke are just too close to the situation and offense to be objective? Like they're in the building every day with these guys, so they know them too well. So they're too close to the situation to be objective. And then I also want to get your thoughts on some of the mock drafts and some of the players coming out. And Bubba, being a college football expert, will be able to shine way more light on this situation than I will. So we're going to get to all that on the other side. Give us 1 minute to reset the Zoom. We will be right back, so don't go anywhere, and we'll come back with all of that stuff. All right, we're coming right back here. Bubba's about to join in. I just wanted to take a couple seconds here to say thanks to the channel members. I'm going to get to all the comments here, to all the people. We're going to do the best we can, so I appreciate it, guys. So thank you for that. And I'm going to bring them right in, and we'll be starting here in about 10 seconds.
Can you keep it on the same stream link, or do you have to resend out a link?
It's I have to send a new one. So yeah, that's why it takes so long.
Everyone has to rejoin.
No. They're still here. They're still here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just for me. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's what I was asking. I was wondering if everyone that was watching had to just go and
no, they're all okay. They're all still here. So
okay, good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them for hanging around.
All right, so we're back with Bubba. The Corey T got that one already. Volkfang, channel member, said, his phone died, and he missed the notification. Well, Volkfang, keep your phone charged, okay? That's a simple solution, okay? Keep it charged. He said, Bubba is spitting fire. Pretty sad, though, that we have a quarterback going into his 4th year, and you have to throw out all but 1 year because of the situation around him. That's
well said, Volkfang.
Very well said. Guy says over-under, we get 1.5 linebackers in the draft.
Hammer the over. Hammer the over.
And Nolly Full Cap says, sorry, guys. The best I can do for you is another bust in the 2nd round. Well, here's the good news, Nolly, and I can guarantee you this. I promise you and guarantee you that Trent Baalke will not select a bust in the 3rd round. That I can guarantee you. That will not happen. Because we don't have a 3rd round pick, so it won't happen.
No, we do. We have the Juwan Taylor pick.
Oh, the comp pick! I forgot about that.
Not only that, I actually have the Jags. I have all the Jags picks listed out here. We have the first comp pick of the entire draft. That has to be the first time in franchise history that's happened, right?
Is that the first pick in the 4th round?
96. No, 96. Okay. It's in the 3rd round. We have a 3rd round comp pick. We have a top 100 comp pick.
Was that from Juwan Taylor?
Juwan Taylor, $20 million to Kansas City.
I love that. Love to hear that.
I know.
So I want to just put a bow on the offensive line talk here, and then we'll get to the draft. Do you think that Trent Baalke? This is what I'm thinking, and I could be wrong, and I want you to tell me I'm wrong, Bubba. So find a way to tell me I'm wrong, or tell me I'm the smartest person ever. Do you think that Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke are just too close to the situation? Like, when you're just too close to it, you're too emotional that you can't see things objectively. Do you think that's what they're doing with the offensive line here? Because going into the season this year, we were like, all right, the 5 we got are solid. And then we watched an entire season of sample size where we saw that our offensive line is a liability.
Yes.
And now we're running it back with the same 5 plus Ezra Cleveland. Do you think they're
he's a free agent, but yeah.
Well, I would imagine they're. I mean, I don't know actually, but do you think they're just too close to the situation to see what the problem here?
You hope not, because that's their jobs not to be, right? I mean, the front office's jobs is to evaluate. I mean, that's what all the other 32 teams have to, or all 32 teams in total. I mean, that's their job. I mean, detach yourself from the situation. I mean, you can't think about it emotionally, which I don't know why they wouldn't necessarily. I mean, the only one that's really tenured on there for any sort of time is Cam. Cam's been here since 2017, obviously. But it's not like a lot of those guys have been around all too long. I mean, obviously, Shatley's been around, but Shatley isn't even really supposed to start. They're supposed to start Barge, but then Barge got hurt, so Shatley slides in. So, I mean, obviously, yes, injuries decimated the unit. And all the offensive lines that were really bad in the league were decimated by injury. But, Kansas City, for their final 2 games of the year, was missing their first team all-pro left guard, and they were able to have a guy slide in and play very solid for them. I mean, that's the difference between the good and bad teams is. I mean, kind of go like L'Jarius Sneed was a late-round pick, Isaiah Pacheco, late-round pick. Like, what do you make of all your draft picks? I mean, you have to treat the 7th-rounders just like you treat the first. I know everyone's trying, but ultimately, your job as a general manager is to hit on draft picks and then make smart free agent signings. The Jags had a clean slate after the 2020 season. You had a generational quarterback just fall into your lap. You had the most cap space in the NFL, and we still have probably a below average roster with just a very, very good quarterback. That's ultimately, you kind of have to call it as it is. You have a solid receiving core. I mean, you just lost probably Calvin Ridley, for being honest, because I don't think they're going to be able to afford to sign him unless they make a few more moves, restructure contracts, which in general, that's a whole different discussion. I'm not a fan of restructuring contracts. but you're a below average roster with a very good quarterback. So you hope that the front office and the coaching staff would detach themselves from the situation a bit more, because that's what they're paid to do. They're paid to evaluate the team and not take things personal. And hey, just because you like a guy because he's a good kid doesn't mean that he's not going to go out there and get your quarterback killed because he's a below average pass blocker.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I think
I'm legitimately concerned to put Trevor Lawrence out there behind this offensive line again.
And Volkfang said it best. Like he said, we're wasting Trevor Lawrence. Like, we are absolutely wasting him.
If I'm Trevor Lawrence, so let's say, hypothetical here, if I'm Trevor Lawrence and you don't re-sign Calvin Ridley, and first, I saw someone mock it the other day. And I love Jags fans, but Jags fans are going to drive me crazy going corner and interior defensive lineman in mock drafts. Like, please. And they're like, oh, you can get Creed Humphrey in the 3rd round. Like, no, we don't draft that well. We drafted Tank Bigsby in the 3rd round. Like, we drafted a running back. And then the next round, we drafted a linebacker. Like, we just don't historically draft that well. Yeah, should we be able to? Yeah, probably. But that's just not what Trent Baalke does. That's not what this front office does. If I'm Trevor Lawrence and we go corner, interior defensive line, and then just try to run it back with the same offensive line and basically the same offense minus Calvin Ridley, I request a trade. I mean, it's very clear that the franchise has no intention to improve the situation around you. And like I said, I kind of agree with your statement earlier, Jason, if everyone was hanging around here before the break, that hopefully they're trying to go all in on offense. You know, they're trying to invest the money, that $10 million or so they have in free agency. Maybe you go get a starting guard and then you draft a starting center, or at least a guy to come in and compete with Luke Fortner. Maybe in the 2nd round, you draft a wide receiver. I mean, it's a deep wide receiver class this year. I do think 17 would be a great spot for a wide receiver. If you want to go with interior offensive line, I'm a big fan of that. But I tend to agree with you, Jason. I mean, you can go get a nickel corner in the 4th round or 3rd round or whatever. I mean, the nickel corners very rarely go high up. A guy like Clark Phillips last year fell into Atlanta's lap in the 3rd round. So you get very talented nickel corners later on in the draft. I don't think that's the case with centers like it used to be. I mean, it used to be like, hey, you didn't touch a center until the 3rd round. You see guys like Tyler Linderbaum go higher up than Baltimore drafted. You see guys like Jackson Powers Johnson mocked mid-first. Like, some people have him getting taken before the Jags pick. Some people have him go to LA. Some people have him go to Miami. And you see guys like Zach Frazier from West Virginia. Some have them slipping late in the 1st round. More likely than not, he'll be an early to mid-2nd round pick. So obviously positional value changes over time. Running backs back in the 70s and 80s were the star of the teams. That's not the case. If anything, running backs are the least valuable positions on teams now. Positional value changes. I think people are starting to realize the importance of interior offensive linemen. Be like, hey, we're drafting those tackles on the outside, top 5, top 10 in the draft, and paying them $20+ million a year. It's time we start to take the interior guys just as seriously, because obviously offensive line is a unit.
And that's what I was trying to think. And like, I think I'm done talking about the offensive line. I want to get into the draft here in a second because we're all pretty pessimistic about it. Like, maybe one good thing is that, like you said, the offensive line is a unit. Maybe with another year playing together, they do improve.
Yeah, and the hope is that they stay healthy,
right,
and that they try to return back to the – I mean, maybe you upgrade one position. Maybe you draft an interior offensive lineman, whether he slides into center or – because it looks like they're running back at right guard. Maybe he slides into center or left guard. And then hopefully everyone stays healthy. Cam won't be starting the season on suspension. You keep Walker Little in a swing tackle position. Hopefully Sheriff improves play. Fortner, if he doesn't get replaced, improves play. And hopefully you're hoping Anton Harrison turns out to be a stud, which I think he played really solid for a rookie last year. They're just kind of thrown out there on an island. A lot of people forget Anton Harrison never played right tackle for last year. I mean, that's a great season for a guy that's never played right tackle. So you hope that he continues to improve. The question, I think another question is Cam, believe he only has 1 or 2 years left on his deal. And like I said, he's a very cuttable guy. So if they need money offseason, there's still a potential they could cut Cam. Do you think about making the move for Anton, moving him from right to left? Because left was his position that he played in college. He obviously played, not even college, his entire life. He's a 1st round pick, so he's going to have that 5th-year option, which is another thing you want to think about with your left tackle. And then it's much easier to find a right tackle than it is with a left tackle. So you already have a guy on your roster that can play left tackle. You can cut your starting one, save a lot of money. That even if that doesn't come to fruition this year, that might be something to do down the road.
That's a good point. I guess we'll all just have to wait and see and pray that the offensive line improves and stays healthy. So I want to play a little game here with you, Bubba. I'll play a little game. All right, you ready for this? And those watching, I didn't tell Bubba about this, so he's going in cold turkey here. So this is going to be honest answers from his heart here, okay? I'm going to give you the names of the different services and websites and who were mocked to be drafted. And I want you to give me a scale of 1 to 10 how good of a fit, and this is going to take some work out of you. You're going to have to factor a couple things in.
Yeah.
How good of a fit they'll be, the probability that we draft them, and if you would like it or not. So you have to factor all those in and give me a score 1 to 10.
One quick question. Is it whether I would draft them or what do I think the Jaguars are going to do?
So you have to factor in these three things. Okay, I'll say it again because it's part of the game.
Okay.
You have to factor in the probability that it happens.
Okay, so that's what the Jaguars would. Okay, so I got it. That's what Trent Ball.
How good of a fit they would be, and if you would like the pick or not. Okay.
So I got to put my Trent Baalke hat on here for a second.
Yes.
Okay.
And so
sounds good.
I'm gonna give you. I have five right here. Okay. All right. Scale 1 to 10. The first one from Bleacher Report. We have defensive back from Alabama, Terrion Arnold.
Okay.
Scale 1 to 10.
I'll go 5.
5. Okay, and we're gonna come back to these. Okay.
Okay.
Number 2, ESPN mock draft. Cornerback out of Toledo, Quinyon Mitchell.
I'll give it a 3.
Okay, I think I know why, but okay. CBS defensive tackle out of Texas, Byron Murphy.
I'll go 2 on that one.
Okay. PFF offensive center / guard, Jackson Powers Johnson.
I'm gonna go 5, but for a different reason.
Okay. And then finally, the Athletic, who has us trading out of the pick.
I'll go 6 on that one.
Okay, so now given all of those, any of those that you think will happen, and what would you do there?
So what I think will happen, I think Terrion Arnold is pretty likely in that scenario. So obviously we know defense coordinator Ryan Nielsen, he likes to play man coverage. If you watch a lot of Alabama, that's what they did. Alabama had an elite corner room last year. You have Malachi Moore in the slot, Cooley McKinstry on the other side, and Terrion Arnold. 5-star kid coming out of high school, went to a small Catholic school in Tallahassee. Played mostly safety in high school. I mean, it was a bit of a convert to corner. Redshirted his first year, so he's just a redshirt sophomore. Was only really playing for 2 years in college. 1-year starter, but Cooley McKinstry had been playing since his freshman year, so people just simply didn't throw the ball over to Cooley's side. Terrion Arnold got a lot of burn this year, ended it with 5 interceptions, I want to say. Don't quote me on that, but I think he had 5 interceptions this year. Both Bama corners are similar, big physical guys, like to play press man at the line of scrimmage. That's just kind of what they did because they had, you had Caleb Downs at safety. He's at Ohio State now. They could let Caleb Downs fly all over the field and just have those corners man up on the outside and wreak havoc in the middle. So I think he matches what the Jags probably want to do going forward on defense. I think that might have been a knock on Darius Williams is like, hey, he's a better zone. Let's be honest. He's a better zone. He's not a big physical corner. You want a big physical corner, I think you probably go with Terrion Arnold. Didn't test the best at the combine. Ran like low 4.5s, which is probably fine if we're being completely honest. I think some people overrate the 40. 3-sport athlete in high school, played basketball. He's also a long jumper coming out of high school. Very good long jumper. Came like 4th in the state of Florida, which is impressive. So he had a good broad jump at the combine, which is reflected in his long jump background.
Yeah, I saw that. I really, one of the comments here from Robert Ayers is like talking about tackle and whether they go out from free agency. So you don't see any situation where they bolster the offensive line in the draft and at that 17 pick?
I hope that'd be my pick. Yeah. I mean, you know my pitch. So I listed, so here, I got it here. So this is the team needs I have listed according to need, obviously. If Calvin leaves, which is probably looking likely at this point, Josh then stays, and then with Darius leaving today, I had to factor that in. I'd go with Calvin leaving, I'd probably go wide receiver, number 1 need with Calvin leaving. Center, offensive guard, cornerback, and then interior defensive line are probably my top 5. So if I'm at 17, I'm probably going interior offensive line or wide receiver if Calvin leaves and then Josh signs or just plays on the tag. If Josh plays on the tag, you probably don't look at edge in the first round. You're still looking at it later, but that'd probably become that 6th need. But if Josh signs long-term, you probably have to look at wide receiver. I think we're overdue for a number 1 guy for Trevor. Whether that guy's available at 17, it's not going to be as likely if we were up at 5, obviously. But I'd probably go wide receiver and then interior offensive lineman if Calvin ends up leaving, which it looks like he will.
So your low number on Quinyon Mitchell and Byron Murphy, was that because you don't think they'd be good fits, or you don't think that they're going to be there?
So Quinton Mitchell, I don't think he's as good as a fit for at what we think. Obviously, we don't know. We haven't seen Brian Nielsen's Jaguars defense, but what we think he wants to do. Like, he played a lot more man than a lot of people did in Atlanta. Quinton Mitchell didn't play. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people don't watch MAC football. I love MAC football. Quinton Mitchell and Toledo, they're big cover 4 team. I mean, like, you watch Quinton Mitchell film, he just didn't get a lot of press man reps in college. I mean, he was playing off the ball with eyes on the quarterback, and he did a very good job at it. He did it at elite level. And I think, obviously, he had a very good Senior Bowl week. He's probably the MVP of the Senior Bowl week if anyone watched Senior Bowl practices, because he didn't play in the game, but he had a good week of practice where he's playing a lot of press man. Obviously, one-on-one reps aren't indicative of how you're actually going to do in a game setting, which I think people are overrating a little bit. Yeah, he can be great in press man, but what happens when it's a run play? I mean, how's he going to come? I mean, because obviously eyes on the quarterback in the zone, it's easier to play the run than it is in man defense. There's a lot of different factors that go into it, and he's never done it in a live setting. So, one, I think it's partially because he won't be there, and then 2, I don't think he's quite the fit the Jags want in a defense where they're playing more man than zone.
And Byron Murphy, dominant D tackle. Any desire for that?
I have probably not. After we cut Darius Williams today, I would have had corner ahead of. I would have had interior defensive lineman ahead of quarter. I still would have been on board with getting a wide receiver or an interior offensive lineman, because, like you said, I think we need bolster the offense. I like Byron Murphy. Concerns about how he'll hold up against NFL talent. He only measured in at 6 foot. And obviously, there's successful guys that are at 6 foot. Clyde Jacanty got drafted by the Bucks either a year or 2 ago from Pitt. Very good player. Obviously, Aaron Donald's a smaller guy, but not everyone's Aaron Donald either. So you got to take that into account. I like Byron Murphy. I think he'll be available. I don't see how they go interior defensive line while having gaping needs at center, guard, wide receiver, and corner. And now corner, because we made that move today. You have 4. Realistically, you have 4 positions. You desperately need upgrades, and you have a regular set of draft picks and very little cap space. So.
Yeah, Seaton Sesko's in here, and Seaton, don't think that you're off the hook from coaching soccer. So don't think that just because you're in here talking about the Jags, that means you're off the hook from coaching soccer. But we'll talk about that another time. The predominant person that you feel like all Jags fans are talking about now, outside of corner, is Jackson Powers-Johnson, because of his versatility to play center and guard, and with so many needs on the offensive line. It seems like a guy that can play at a high level at both those positions would be a great fit for our team. Do you see any value? Would you draft Jackson Powers-Johnson if he's there?
Yeah, I think I would try. I mean, obviously, I'm not in front offices. You try to get league intel. You try to get a vibe from other teams on where you think he's going to get drafted. I think at this point, it's such a glaring need. I think you have to draft an interior offensive lineman. And I understand people saying, like, oh, you can wait till the 3rd or 4th round to do that. I mean, you have to hit on this pick. You missed on a 3rd round center who was the first pick of the 3rd round, so it's almost like a pseudo second. You missed on that. Obviously, Barch was from 2020, so that was a while ago, but you missed on Ben Barch. I mean, the sheriff signing probably wasn't cracked up to what it was supposed to be. You're missing on interior guys left and right. If you have a surefire guy at 17 that you know can walk in and be a Pro Bowl level guy, which, let's be honest, if you're drafting someone in the middle of the 1st round at interior offensive line, they need to be a hit. All draft picks need to be hit, if we're being honest. But really, if you draft an interior guy that early, if you are that confident in your evaluation of him, I say go for it. Go get him. If he's your guy and you know that no matter what, he's going to start and be a massive improvement to that position, I'm for it. I don't see it happening just because we cut Darius Williams today. I think, like you said, I thought it was a smokescreen as well when you said last week that you thought that all the corner talk was a smokescreen. I agreed with you. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think they're going to key in on a corner now. Whether that's Nate Wiggins, Cooley McKinstry, Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, whoever it is, I think they're keying in on a corner.
Volkfang channel member asks, and this is why we love having Bubba, because he probably knows who this is, and I have no idea. He says, thoughts that Tanner Bortolini might be a good center because he's actually athletic, unlike Fortner.
That's the Wisconsin guy, isn't it?
I had no clue.
I mean, like I said, there has to be some sort of upgrade. Wisconsin has a good track record of centers. Frank Ragnow from the Lions, I believe, is Wisconsin grad. Yeah, there's a lot of good. Wisconsin pumps out offensive linemen, tier offensive linemen. They had an interesting year at Wisconsin in general because Wisconsin was really in a big time transition year. Obviously, they fired Paul Chryst. They bring in Luke Fickell, He brings in the North Carolina offensive coordinator, whose name's evading me right now, runs a completely 180, bringing Tanner Mordecai from SMU. So Wisconsin was in a little bit of transition. They were ranked preseason. I mean, the people thought Wisconsin got a good year. Just offensively, it wasn't there because they're going from this power football offense that they've had since Ron Dane was there in the 90s and 2000s. They've had great running back history, obviously, but Luke Fickell's trying to bring them into the new era of college football where you're spreading out a little bit more. You have elite playmakers now. So Wisconsin film's going to be, I need to go back and watch him, but Wisconsin film's going to be a lot of fun to watch from this year because you're going to have a lot of guys that aren't doing what they're used to. Guys were brought to Wisconsin. They're being maulers. They're lining up with 7 offensive linemen. Wisconsin spread it out a little bit more this year. I think that's how they're going to be going forward. Wisconsin film should be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, see, I'm glad you know that. Apparently, he is from Wisconsin, so I'm glad that you know all that because I don't know. I don't watch a lot of college football. I'm more of an NFL guy, but that's okay. I can admit my weaknesses, and I'm not afraid. I'm not insecure. I can do that. So, last thing I want to ask you about trading down. Because PFF has us trading down. Trent Baalke has an extensive history of trading down. Do you
Did
see
it twice last year?
Do you see any value in trading down? And if that were like thinking about that, like, is there any way that trading down could be a solution for the problems that we have?
Yeah, I mean, so let's say, for example, you look at a guy like Zach Frazier, who's the West Virginia center, still similar player to Jackson Powers Johnson, very athletic. I mean, you see the guy move. I mean, centers nowadays move so well. I mean, obviously, they're the smallest offensive linemen, but I think Jason Kelce made it really popular at the center position. Just have Jason Kelce was like a walk-on running back, I believe, at Cincinnati.
I think he was a tight end.
I think, was he?
He was something.
He's a walk-on skill guy, and obviously Travis was a quarterback going to Cincinnati. But I mean, just like very good athletes that gained some weight and then just moved very well. Zach Frazier kind of reminds me of that kind of mold of center. Not a massive guy. I don't think he has super long arms. Neither is Jackson, but just a guy that can move really well. If you have a similar grade on Zach Frazier and you feel like you can get something in return, because like I said, this team has 4 positions they have gaping holes in. You have to before today, I don't think you did. Now you have to go get a corner. I mean, it's not an option. You have to get another starting corner, I think. You have to upgrade the interior offensive line. You have to upgrade the receiver position if Calvin leaves. So with all these gaping holes, I don't think draft capital is a bad thing. Hey, who knows? Maybe we can get a seasoned veteran in return, but that just doesn't seem to happen all that much anymore nowadays, especially not with the 17th pick. Maybe if you're a little higher in the draft, you get some players in return, but I don't think it's going to happen at this point.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And actually, now that I think about it, I think he was actually a linebacker. Now that I think about it,
I know he was more of a skill guy, gained some weight. Like, hey, you're a great athlete, you're physical. Let's try you at center. I mean, that seems to be kind of popular nowadays with these centers that just move really, really well. And the interesting thing about Jackson Powers Johnson, he's a bigger guy for center, but yeah, there's a few different. It's an interesting draft because there's a few offensive linemen that are listed as tackles that I think could slide in and be really, really good guards, whether it's Tulisa Fuaga from Oregon State, Troy Fatanu from Washington, who has really long arms, but he's just shorter. He's 6'3", which isn't very big for an NFL tackle. Even J.C. Latham is an absolute mauler right tackle from Alabama. I think you throw him at guard, and he's just an absolute beast there. And it negates some of the issues he has playing in space with his bending at the hips that he had at Alabama. I think that negates it if you slide him into guard. So it's a very interesting offensive line class in total. You could take a tackle and then very easily slide them into guard. I think there's a few guys that could fill multiple roles, even play 4 or 5, not 5 probably, but 4 different positions along the offensive line.
I was going to ask you about Fatuana, Robinson, and Latham, so I'm glad that you addressed those already, which is great. Before I move on to some other people that I want to ask you about in the draft, I just want to ask you straight up. You're Trent Baalke. You are on the clock. You have a evaluated big board, and you're happy with the receiver on the board left, you're happy with the offensive lineman, and you're happy with the interior defensive lineman, and you're happy with the receiver. I think I already said that. You're happy with all those positions. Where are you going at 17 if you're happy with the big board?
It's a really good question. I think I don't know his big board but like you said, if I'm Trent Baalke, at this point, if you have a guy like Tulisa Fuaga from Oregon State, I mean, I don't know if he makes it 17. Some people have him even slipping in the top 10. I think you have a guy like that. He's 6'6", extremely physical, played tackle at Oregon State. Doesn't have the longest arms. His arms are just over 33 inches. And we know Trent Baalke's a big arms guy. So if you get a guy like that, people think he's an all-pro caliber guard. He can definitely play tackle. He played tackle at college. If you can slide him into that left guard spot, I think that's a massive upgrade there. And let's be honest, left guard's been a position we've been shaky at for a little while now. I mean, there hasn't been a solid solution at left guard in a few years. And then I think you can go maybe in that third round with your compository pick, or maybe trade back, draft a guy like Troy Fatanu from Washington. Washington won the Joe Moore Award this past year for having the best offensive line unit. Troy was the left tackle of that Washington team. He was the anchor. So if you can go get a guy like that, even slide them into guard. I mean, just play them at left guard. Let's go get a superstar at left guard. I think that solves a lot of your issues along the offensive line. And I think you could draft a center later to at minimum compete with Fortner. Hopefully beat him out, or Fortner just improves massively from what we've seen, especially last year, but over the last 2 years. Generate some competition along that offensive line. That's probably the way that I go. I know that goes against my big board of wide receiver being the number one need if Calvin leaves. But ultimately, I told Jason this before, there's nothing in the entire season matters if 16 isn't healthy. Like if Trevor goes down, I mean, we saw what happened with Cincinnati. A lot of team quarterbacks got injured this year. But this offense really rolls when 16's playing well. And for him to play well, he needs support around him. If Trevor's injured at any point in the season, just throw the season away. It's an absolute scrap. You move on to the next year. So I'll go against my big board and probably go offensive line, just making sure that 16's upright is the most important thing this team can do.
I'll agree with you 100%. I agree the exact same way. Take the best offensive lineman, keep Trevor up. I agree with that 100%. I think Trevor can make any skill position. They can elevate any skill position group he has, whether it's Jamal Agnew or Christian Kirk. I think he elevates everybody. So keep him up, keep him upright. I will also say I think Andrew Norwell would be a little slighted by your comment of the best left guard we've had in a while. So you better hope that Andrew Norwell is not watching because he may be a little upset by that.
Is he frequent of your channel?
The former All-Pro comes to Jacksonville and is utterly terrible. So I don't know how that happens, but it does happen. Two more names I want to throw at you here real quick. Darius Robinson out of Mizzou and Nate Wiggins, corner out of Clemson.
I think it's early for Robinson. He's been getting a lot of buzz. Had a good Senior Bowl week. I don't believe he tested the best at the combine. Obviously, that's not the end-all, be-all. I don't see a need. He's a big edge. I would say a very versatile guy. Missouri ran. If you go back and watch Missouri's defense coordinator this past year was Blake Baker, who's now since moved on to LSU. Crazy exotic defense. I mean, Missouri would bring, and that's really why Georgia had a lot of issues over the past 2 years with Missouri. You go back and watch those games. Georgia had a lot of negative runs against this Missouri. Georgia runs a lot of gap scheme. Georgia's not a very heavy zone team. Georgia runs a lot of gap scheme. They're pulling a lot of guys. Missouri's just shooting gaps left and right. Georgia's offense coordinator, whether it was Todd Monken 2 years ago, Mike Bobo this past year, they had no clue what was going on when they played Missouri. So I'm going a little off track, but hybrid guy, that's who Missouri likes, and their defense, they like guys can play multiple positions. I don't have edge on the big board at all. Yes, and that's another thing. You need depth at edge because you're losing DeJuan Smoot and Caleb on Chason, Jason's favorite player, to free agency.
That's right.
Who's your depth at edge? I mean, is it Abdullah? I mean, is it Tyler Lacey? I mean, I don't know who your edge rushers are. I mean, and we saw last year, there's one guy on Twitter, I think his name's Daniel Griffiths. He does a great job of posting Jags stats. So if that is his name, go give him a follow. But he posted Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker generated 70% of all Jaguar pressures. Just some crazy stat like that this year. You need help along the edge. You lose a guy like Arden Key. You hope DeJuan Smoot could come back in form after Achilles tear. Didn't really happen. Caleb Vaughn didn't take the necessary steps. And then both of those guys are leaving more likely not because you don't have a lot of cap space. So you need help at edge, but it's probably number 7 on the list of needs, unfortunately. I mean, you kind of have to take your losses because hey, I can deal with our edge depth not being quite where it needs to be as long as Trevor's healthy.
And Nate Wiggins.
And then Nate Wiggins reminds me so much of Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State, the rookie corner, drafted him really high last year, mid-first round pick. Really struggled. Emmanuel Forbes weighed 166 at the combine last year. Nate Wiggins weighed 173 this yeyear. I know there's a few times Nate Wiggins struggled against bigger receivers, specifically Miami. He struggled at times against Colby Young, who's since transferred to Georgia. I like it. Obviously, he ran the 4.28. It's very flashy. I don't think he fits the system that well because I think the Jags are bigger physical corners, like a guy like William McKinstry, Terrion Arnold. Those guys are pushing 200 pounds. 173 pounds, I believe, was second percentile of all NFL corners. That's a tough number for at corner to play at. Guys they're gonna be throwing screens your way. They're gonna be putting their biggest receiver on you. They'll be flexing tight ends out you. If you're 173 pounds, you're gonna get picked on. And we saw that with Emmanuel Forbes this year, who got benched a few games into his rookie season because he was just struggling nearly every play because teams were targeting him. 173-pound corners are it's a tough take in the first round. Nate Wiggins, very willing tackler, but there's only so much you can do with that frame.
Yeah, so we're looking at about 5 minutes left here. So is there anybody that we haven't mentioned in the draft that you think would be a good fit, maybe in the second or third round, that you think the Jags could target that would be a good fit here that Trent Baalke should go after?
Second or third round. So
or
we're
even
probably
the first round even.
I think first round, we didn't talk much about wide receiver in the first round because realistically, the top 3 guys are going to be gone. Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze are all going to be gone by then. So then you go into that tier 2 receiver. You roll into the Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. You roll into the Keon Coleman. Some people think are up in that tier. I probably don't. You roll into the A.D. Mitchell from Texas, Georgia transfer. That's the kind of guys you're probably looking at wide receiver, and they fit the bill. I mean, both of those guys are about 6'3". They both ran low 4.3s at the combine, which is very fast for this guy. And they're both uber productive in college. Brian Thomas a little bit more just because he had Jane Daniels throwing him the football, and he was on the other side, Malik Neighbors. Both of those are very, very talented receivers, guys that you should definitely do your homework on if you're a Jags fan, or hopefully the Jags front office as well, especially if you lose Calvin Ridley. Because let's be honest, the Jags are searching for that number 1 receiving threat. They hope they got in Calvin. I don't think it worked out quite like they thought. They still want to bring him back, but I just don't think they're going to be able to afford to do that. So they need that number 1 dominant receiver threat. These guys offer size. These guys offer versatility, I think. Good at the catch point as well. So those are 2 guys that the Jags should probably look into. As far as later round guys, it just all depends on what position you're looking at. You're looking at, let's say, corner. It's going to be tough. Kool-Aid, I don't think it's going to slip that far. Even interior defensive line, do you look at a guy like T'Vondre Sweat, like the big 366-pounder from Texas? I don't know if he's available that late in the second round, but you never know. Guys slip every once in a while. T'Vondre Sweat won the Outland Trophy this past year for best interior lineman, offense or defense in the entire country. Very athletic guy. Ran like a sub 5-second 40 at 366 pounds, which is kind of scary that someone that big moving that fast. But yeah, T'Vondre Sweat, maybe a guy in the second round. Better than most guys his size at generating pass rush as well. So we'll see if he's available in the second.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to here in the next couple of weeks. We're kind of getting into draft season. We're probably I used to do a bunch of film breakdowns on potential guys that the Jags could draft, and those videos always got a lot of views by the team that ended up drafting them. That was not the Jags, so that was kind of fun, but they take a lot of time. So recently I've just kind of done wait till the Jags draft a guy, then I'll do a film breakdown. So that's probably what I'll do. I'll probably get you on for those because that'll probably be a lot of fun to do some of that. But I appreciate you being here tonight. Go follow Bubba on Twitter. His Twitter is right there on the stream, right there. So you can, hopefully you've already done it if you're here. And then all of his other information, his YouTube, his website, that's all in the channel description. So click on the video description. You can see all of that there. There's a link that'll take you right there. Go follow Bubba. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Bubba is somebody that when people listen to him, they realize how much he knows. And it's only a matter of time before everyone's following him and watching his stuff. So be one of the first ones that does that and go follow and subscribe to all that stuff now because he obviously knows what he's talking about. He knows way more than me about a lot of things. And so that's why I like to have people on here that know that. So Bubba, any last thoughts or anything you got? We got about 2 minutes. Anything you got left on your brain?
No, so obviously I got married this past week. I've been moving, so I've been busy, but I'm gonna try to start. I was running really consistently during the season. Haven't been at quite as good since national championship ended in July. But I'm gonna try to start doing film breakdowns. I've done a few over the past year. I think last year was my first year. I did a handful. If anyone has anyone they would love for me to look at, I'm more than happy to take recommendations. I'll tag you in the tweet and everything. So if you have anyone that you like, I'm gonna start getting into breaking down prospects here. I like to do it with kind of a Jags focus. Last year, I know I was looking at some corners and some other positions as well. But yeah, feel free to shoot me a DM or even just tweet me if you have anyone you'd like me to look at, and I'll do a full breakdown on them.
I love that. People send me stuff all the time, and I'm like, I don't think I have time to do this. So
just send them to
Bubba. Because although he's married, he knows what he's talking about. So again, congratulations, Bubba. I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone that was here in the chat, especially the channel members. You're the ones that keep this going. Volkfang was here, Nolly Full Cab, Corey T, Nolly Full Cab, Gladiator 97, both donated super chats. Eddie donated super chat. Mrs. Duval, channel member, was here. Rico. We had all kind of people here. The chat was popping tonight. I apologize if we didn't get onto all of your comments, but that's okay because we wanted to talk Jags heavily tonight. So we'll be back at least next week on Tuesday for a show. So, Bubba, thank you again. I appreciate your time. I look forward. We'll have to do this again very soon, especially with all the draft stuff coming up. So thank you for that. Everyone else, thank you for watching.